But people say to me, well, do you have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ? And I'm like, well, insofar as I have a personal relationship with anybody, you know, I'm autistic. We don't really do personal relationships.
Hello, I'm Gary. Now, some people call me a very tall man. I've travelled to the UK to see the sights, enjoy the delightful English weather, and to meet some wonderfully inspiring people. Today's guest has been on New Zealand TV for a number of years, and she will in all probability be instantly recognisable. So, who is she? Anne Hegerty, though you might know her better as the Governess from The Chase. And being in England, it seemed only proper that the first question I asked her was, how do you take your tea?
Milk first?
No, tea first.
Tea first?
Tea first so that you can see whether it's strong enough or indeed too strong.
Now, is that the posh way, or...?
Well, it is, yes. It's considered, you know, people who put milk in first, bit common. But only snobs care about that. And who cares what snobs think?
Exactly. Now, we've got a little present for you from New Zealand, and normally you'd take it home and open it afterwards, but because I think that this present is going to save the Chase management thousands of pounds, thousands, I'd love it if you could open it now.
I will do that. What do we have here? Tree and flowers. And it enables you to learn New Zealand flowers.
So are you anywhere aware of New Zealand flowers?
I've only been to New Zealand once. And I didn't really have enough time travelling around to see how different the flora is from Australia. But I know it's very different climatically from Australia.
So we thought we'd give you the tea towel so that you can swat up on New Zealand flowers, and then if the question comes up, you'll bang.
Wonderful.
Do you
that's gorgeous.
often get questions about New Zealand on The Chase?
Not very often. I know they've been asking us if we would do some introductions for New Zealand, and they, you know, they say to you, could you say, start by saying hello? And I'm like, well, could I say kia ora? Is that okay?
Oh, very good.
Oh, well, we have no idea what that means, but if Anne wants to say it, that's fine.
Kia ora means hello, welcome.
I know it does,
so
yes.
it's really, really good. So,
yeah.
And so it is kia ora, Anne, and thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much.
I don't know, well, you won't know this, but you and I are both fans of one thing.
Oh, yeah?
Facebook Marketplace.
Oh, yes. I buy so much stuff on Facebook. I was going to say I buy so much rubbish, but actually I buy good stuff. I buy stuff I really like and appreciate.
But what about the stuff that you've bought on Facebook Marketplace that you don't? My worst buy was a pair of shoes that I loved but didn't fit me.
Well, yeah, no, I've never bought clothes on Facebook Marketplace, and if I did, yes, I would make sure they fitted. I tend to buy, I'm a sucker for Chinese, what they call fish pots, sort of big ceramic bowls with paintings of goldfish inside, and you put plants in them, and I've got several of those, and they really are lovely. On one occasion, I bought an enormous mirror. And the thing is, I know that I can get in huge quantities of stuff into my little Honda Jazz, but it wasn't quite big enough for the giant mirror. So what we had to do was to leave it in a neighbour's downstairs flat, and then I phoned David, my agent, and said, could you possibly come around with your giant car and fit this mirror in and bring it to me? So unfortunately, he's very long-suffering. But it's a gorgeous mirror. I've got it in my living room, and it's got plants in front of it, and it's just near the window, so you get more light and more plants.
I was thinking before coming to meet you that your life has changed. And many of our lives changed. I go back to when I was 16, 17. I thought I was going to be a school teacher, and my dad told me that for the next 40 years I'd be a school teacher and I'd be very happy. But it didn't work out that way. Go back to when you were 15, 16, and what was in your mind?
15, 16, I mean, I vaguely wanted to be a writer. I always did very well at English, but I didn't really have anything particular I wanted to write about. I very much admired people who could write stories, but I've never been able to. I read enormously. I vaguely supposed that I would monetize it by being a journalist, which is what I did try doing for about 10 years. And then I moved into academic proofreading because I was always much more interested in correcting other people's mistakes. I love correcting other people's mistakes. It's so much fun. So I very much enjoyed doing that for about 20 years. But yeah, that was the idea. I was going to be some sort of writer or something. I never seriously thought about being a teacher because just no, I'm absolutely no good with them. I would be no good with keeping order or with attempting to instruct people who didn't want to be instructed.
But did I read somewhere that you actually have written a couple of children's books?
Oh, when I was just starting out proofreading, I got a job in-house at a children's publishing house in Manchester. I did write 2 books under the name Richard Scarry, and I should mention that Richard Scarry, signed off on that. In fact, we were dealing with his son, Huck. He literally is Hucklecat, if you know the Richard Scarry books, but there's a character in it called Hucklecat. What I was asked to do was to take an old Richard Scarry book and cut out the pictures and basically turn them into a new book and come up with some new text and turn it into a sticker book.
So journalist, proofwriter, writer of children's books, and now you're on the telly. Who was the most surprised person in the world to one day see you on telly?
Not me, oddly enough. I've always secretly wanted to be famous and always sort of thought, one day I will be, but I'm just not quite sure at what. Probably people I was at school with, I think. I have recently got back in touch with people that I was at school with, particularly people I was at secondary school with. And a few months ago, I went and had tea with a friend who now lives in Finchley. And he told me, he was a year ahead of me in school, and he told me what I hadn't known, that he'd been very worried about me when we were at school. He was like, how's she going to cope when she leaves school? How will she cope at university? She'll be out of a familiar setting and she's not going to know what to do. And I think a lot of people were sort of tremendously relieved that I finally found, a job that actually brought me in money that I could do.
So were they surprised because they knew that you were autistic? Is that why they were worried about you?
I don't think a lot of... I've noticed that nobody who knew my mother has had anything to say to me because I've kind of gone off the script. The script was always that my mother was this wonderful person, enormously accomplished, and she's got this son who's pretty good, and then she's got the daughter. Oh dear, yes, we're not sure what to make of the daughter. And all those people have just gone completely quiet since I got the job on the chase. Of course, they may be dead. I don't know.
So were you always brainy?
Yes, I was always a nerdy child, and I learnt early on that I could memorise things, which was quite nice. I used to. My mother was very, very keen on never putting pressure on children, to the extent that it was kind of frustrating. I was always the "mummy, you're not watching me" sort of child. And she felt that she'd rather had Shakespeare shoved down her throat when she was little. So she put the Shakespeare on the top shelf of the bookshelf. And she didn't really quite figure out that I was the child who liked to climb. I was an extremely climbing child. And I just swarmed up the bookshelf and got the Shakespeare down. And I knew the phrase "to be or not to be, that is the question." And I thought, well, what happens after that? That can't be the whole of it because it doesn't make any sense. So I thought, right, I want to find this speech and find out what the rest of it is.
Whether it's nobler in the mind, etc.
Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing them to die, sleep, no more, and by sleep say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks. And I can do the whole thing because I read it so many times, I realised I actually knew it all off by heart.
Well done.
So I discovered, that I could learn things off by heart, and this was my party trick. And I did that. And I remember at school, there was a staircase that had photographs going up it of recent monarchs. And I noticed that it seemed to go straight from George VI to George V. And I thought, hang on a minute, I have a feeling there was another one in there. Where's he gone? OK, well, clearly I can't trust these people to tell me the truth. I'm going to have to go and look the list up myself. And as a result, I know all the monarchs of England from 1066 with the dates, and I have done since I was in primary school.
So for you, does everything have to be right?
I don't think I'm certainly not a perfectionist. I'm not sort of obsessive compulsive. I just, I wanted to know things, and I just wanted to be reassured, because I would ask my mother questions and I would never understand the answer. So I thought, right, I'm just going to go and look them up in books then. So I learnt to do that.
And so you were what, 8, 9, 10?
Yes, I mean, probably younger than that. Must have been around. I tend to assume that everything happens when I was about 8. I think I tend to sort of crunch all years into about 1966. But I think probably around 8.
So we know you as one of the chasers.
Indeed.
Can you remember the first time you ever walked into the studio to record for the first time?
It felt like ages before we finally got in studio. We had spent what felt like months, was probably only weeks, rehearsing in small rooms with cut-out cardboard table and little sort of fold-up cardboard pegs, and then a strip of paper that went from 1 to 30, and that was to represent the final chase. And we kept on doing this, and I kept thinking, it's so long since they did the first series, and I can't really remember what this is all going to be like when we get in. But finally, yeah, we did get in. I remember the very first show we ever filmed, because I lost. Which, I always say to new chasers, it's okay to lose your first show. Don't worry about that. But I do remember, I simply remember that I was trying to be terribly intimidating and cold and icy and merciless, and basically staring down the contestants. And I remember that one of the contestants I was facing was a farmer from Gloucestershire called Bill. When he came out to the table, Bradley noticed he was looking extremely nervous. He said, "You all right, mate?" And Bill said, I got a half-ton bull on my farm. Don't scare me as much as she does. And at the end of the series, the producer gave me a little card with a picture of a black bull on it and said, "To remind you of Bill." So it was nice to know, right, I'm getting the scary bit right. And I absolutely love doing the chase. It's absolutely the best job I've ever had. And there's a clause in our contract that says you have to undertake to maintain your skills as a chaser.
So how do you do that?
Well, going to lots of quizzes. This is what I do. Basically, just quizzing a lot. Even though, if I started losing, they wouldn't mind, but I'd mind.
How do you prepare then? Because if you're a sportsman, you go out and train, right?
Yeah.
Please don't tell me you open Google and switch on Wikipedia and just look.
I don't exactly just switch on Wikipedia and look. The only time I would do that would be if I needed to just sort of feel like I needed to wind down, because that's actually my way to relax. If I'm just sort of thinking, okay, I'm feeling irritated, I'm upset by what's going on in the world, I need to, either go on Twitter and look at pictures of puppies, or else I'll boot up Wikipedia and I'll just read about something nice. And I'll just I'll pick somewhere, I'll pick a town and read about it and see if there's a nice stately home there and read about the stately home and look at pictures of it. My mother was a frustrated history teacher, I always think. And she used to take us to places. She was always taking us to castles and cathedrals and stately homes, and that bored me because I don't really learn by actually going to places and looking at them. But I love reading about them. I would kind of stumble around these places thinking, I do not know, I do not care about any of this. And then she'd buy a guidebook and, I'd still be reading the guidebook in a couple of years. It would fascinate me, but I didn't want to actually have to go to the places.
When you grew up, you weren't a Sunday school girl?
No, not at all. Actually, we occasionally went to our local Church of England school, and occasionally, I think we basically used to park my little brother in the Sunday school, just to shut him up, really.
C.S. Lewis is an author that I have a lot of admiration for. Is he someone who you've read?
Absolutely. I've read so much. I mean, I was raised on the Narnia books, and then I started coming across his Christian books. You know, I read things like Mere Christianity, I read, which really knocked me back, and then Miracles, The Problem of Pain, and a whole load of little essays of his, like The Weight of Glory and so on. And that made a huge difference to me, because I just sat there thinking, I can't actually poke any holes in these arguments, and I'm used to arguing, and I was brought up atheist, and this is all leading to, you know, very awkward and uncomfortable conclusions, because I sort of can't help thinking he's basically right about all of this.
So you came to faith, to Christianity, because you couldn't fault the argument?
Basically, yes. I do still have a very sort of technical, logical, apologetic take on things. It's very unemotional for me. It's just sort of, well, okay, you know, this seems in fact to be the case. This is, you know, this is the truth. So that's how I came to that.
So we're not likely to see you at a Pentecostal church meeting with your hands in the air?
Not awfully, no, not terribly.
But you do have a strong faith, and you still want to go to church on a regular basis?
I do. I go to church on a Sunday. Found myself at church when I was last filming in Australia. Found myself at church. I always went, you know, if ever I'm going to be somewhere else on a Sunday, it's like, right, where am I going to go to church? Yeah. So yeah, that's got to happen.
And in terms of a relationship with God, do you pray?
I do. I try and be thankful for things, because I just always think that I'm not sufficiently, and my life has been so fantastic for the last sort of 14 years, and I sometimes feel like, you know, I don't emphasise that perhaps enough in my own life. But people say to me, well, do you have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ? And I'm like, well, insofar as I have a personal relationship with anybody, you know, I'm autistic. We don't really do personal relationships. So it's kind of, you know, it's all sort of quite technical as far as I'm concerned.
You just say that. You say, I'm autistic, and there's a smile on your face.
It's more, I like a lot of alone time. And if ever I'm socialising, it's because it's someone else's idea. So I'm never really quite sure how to establish whether or not I have any kind of personal relationship with anyone. So
how do you define autism?
It always used to be the case that there was Asperger's syndrome, and there was high functioning autism, and then there was autism. And Asperger's syndrome was when you learnt to talk at the normal time, and high functioning autism was if you had a speech delay. And it was a spectrum. We've known since the 1990s that it was on a spectrum. Nowadays, they just bundle it all into autism. I would say it's a way of your brain wiring up differently, so that there are cues from humans that you don't always pick up. And if you pick them up, you're not always sure what they mean. You have difficulty remembering faces, no matter how much you look at them and try and memorise them. You're never quite sure. It's as if you're not quite sure what you're looking for. And it's about liking to be alone, liking everything to be predictable, having trouble improvising if you suddenly have to do something differently. I always, you know, I have a plan B and a plan C and a plan D, because if something goes wrong, I need to know I have all those backup plans. So I checked, you know, to make sure that I had this house in the sat-nav. And then I actually looked at it on the sat-nav and thought, well, I haven't got an address here. So I went and looked at it on Street View and thought, still not quite sure which of these turnings it is. So I had to ask, what is the name of the house? And once I had the name of the house, I saw the sign. But I always think I've got to, you know, plan all those things, have all that information as backup, because I can't think fast. And it's the case in quizzing that I can't think fast. When you watch me in a final chase, you may think that I look really fast. Compared to most humans, I answer quiz questions really fast. Compared to most quizzers, I answer quiz questions really fast. Compared to most chasers, I'm the 6th out of 6. I'm really not that quick.
Well, because that would be the one thing that I thought that you were really good at, the instant recall of the answer.
It's because I know a lot. So, you know, there's a lot of it just floating below the surface. But Mark, for example, can answer questions far faster than I can, and Paul can as well. When we do Beat the Chasers, I mean, when it goes out, you're on Twitter and so many people are going, is Anne's buzzer broken? Is Anne actually here at all? I'm like, yes, I am here. Every now and then I flinch trying to get to the buzzer, and sometimes I don't even get as far as flinching because Mark or Paul is in there ahead of me.
Can I just go back to the autism thing for a minute? Because I would imagine there are people listening that have for years thought there's something not right with me, or it just doesn't feel good, or they're thinking of their children.
The thing is, it is a syndrome, which means it's a load of symptoms that appear to be unconnected. And when I started investigating it, I looked at the list of diagnostic criteria and I thought, well, this is just weird, because these are all things that look unconnected, but apparently they're all symptoms of autism, and nearly all of them are things that I either do or did when I was a kid and nobody could explain them. Most other people didn't do them. So I looked at things like, I used to lie in bed and I would roll back and forth really quite fast for about sort of 30 seconds. And I now realise that actually is the sort of thing that that autistic kids do. Autistic kids are thought of as rocking. I rolled. It can be either. It can be anything. It can be lots of things like that. They call it stimming. And I was like, okay, nobody was ever able to explain this. And all I understood was that it made my hair go matted, and my mother had terrible difficulty combing it out. I've got sort of frizzy Scottish hair, and it's difficult to comb, and even worse when you've been rolling back and forth on the pillow. Celebrity
is quite a public thing, and one of the questions that sometimes comes up is, it's a two-edged sword, being as famous as you are. Are you okay paying the price of that?
Yeah, if I'm going somewhere and I'm late, and I'm very often late, because I always take longer to do things than I think I'm going to, and I take longer to actually kind of line all my brain cells up and point them at the problem and say, right, you really need to get up and go and have a shower and get dressed and get in the car and get out. Because of that, if I'm late, as I so often am, if I have to sort of go through a petrol station or something like that, quite often I'm staring at the floor a lot. And I'm trying to send out this vibe of, please don't talk to me, please don't talk to me, because, I am really extremely wound up at the moment, and it will not be good for you. But otherwise, but sometimes I can snap at people, and I try not to, and I feel terribly guilty if I do. But I try as much as possible if I'm out. If I'm shopping and people recognise me in the supermarket, I try and smile and be friendly and pose for a selfie. Because the thing is, I'm always conscious of the fact that the show started in 2009. I joined in 2010. We didn't start to get serious media attention until about 2015. But between 2010 and 2015, who always recognised us was the public. The press didn't know who we were. The paps didn't know who we were, but the public did. They were the ones who would stop us, and they were the ones who you knew was watching, because we always got really high ratings. So you'd go to an ITV party and everyone was sort of smiling politely at you, thinking, who is that? And Mark would nudge me and say, we'd get bigger ratings than any of these people. So I've always been aware, these are really the people that matter.
When it's all finished, and I guess one day it must all finish,
yeah.
What happens to Anne Hegerty, the Governess?
Oh, the Governess sort of goes back in her box. The costume lives in the wardrobe department, and the name, the Governess, belongs to ITV. It's their intellectual property.
Is there, however, something in your mind that you would still love to do?
I'd love to do a bit of acting, I'd love to be on a TV show or in a film or something. I know various people that are trying to get things off the ground, and it's just a question of whether they can get the money. The guy on The Chase, he's written a sitcom with a part in it for me, and, it'd be brilliant to be able to get that made. And it'd be lovely to be in a film. I'd like to be in a Marvel movie. I'd like to be a supervillain. Fat old supervillain. That'll work.
Final question. When it's all done, how is Anne Hegerty going to live the 70s, 80s and 90s?
Doing sort of pretty much what I do when I'm not out working. I mean, I just kind of stay home, surf the internet, read enormously, chat to people online, look after my house. I'm very undomesticated, really, but I sort of try and, I always feel this sense of I've actually accomplished, I've mended something, I've sewn on a button, I've actually got something ironed, I've put away the washing. This morning I actually cleared out all the clean dishes in the dishwasher. I'm so proud. This stuff is hard for me. So I'll keep trying to do that sort of thing, basically.
And will there be a cat in your life?
No, I don't really want pets. I mean, I'm always very happy to engage with other people's pets, but I don't like anything in my house that might in any way kind of respond to me. I don't even, I don't have an Alexa or anything like that, because I want to be able to just talk to myself around the house without anyone sort of actually hearing anything I'm saying. So, I always say nothing but the central nervous system. I've got pot plants.